Good afternoon. My name is Allegra Lawrence Hardy. I am chair of the Abrams for Governor campaign. And I have been working hard with the lawyers that we've put together to form our litigation team to ensure that the constitutional rights of every Georgian are upheld. I am here today with members of the team, those who are leading our team, and who have been working tirelessly to help us strategize and develop options to ensure every vote is counted. Again, my name is Allegra Lawrence Hardy. I'll go ahead and spell it. ALLEGRA LAWRENCE-HARDY. And I'm going to allow each member of the legal team to come forward and introduce themselves.
I'm Kurt Kastorf, that's Kurtkastorf. I'm an appellate and trial attorney with the Somerville firm in Atlanta.
My name is Maya Kogan, MAIACOGEN. I'm an attorney with Lawrence & Bundy, LLC.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth, B-E-T-H, Tanis, T-A-N-I-S, and I am a trial lawyer.
I'm John Chandler, JOHNCHANDLER, and I'm part of the litigation team for this campaign.
And of course, you all know Lauren Growargo, and I know that you're eager to have an update on the numbers. And so I'm going to, before we get into some of the litigation issues and options we'll be pursuing, I'd like to turn the microphones over to Lauren, our campaign manager, so that she can tell you where we are on the numbers and why we are so concerned and why we are still in this fight.
Thanks, Allegra. Thank you, everybody, this afternoon. All of the votes in this race have not been counted. For example, this morning at 8:10 a.m., Cobb County reported additional early advance votes. In fact, they reported 236 votes for Abrams, 65 for Kemp, and 2 for Metz. We had all been under the impression that all the early votes were in Cobb County, and I believe they were listed at 100% reporting. Votes are still being counted, ladies and gentlemen, and the votes of all the voters of Georgia deserve to be counted before the now former Secretary of State announces his victory. Some additional votes that have not been counted are our military and overseas ballots. In Fulton County alone, that number is 1,000 votes, and there are more all over the state. Those have until Friday to arrive and be counted. Our members of the military deserve to have their votes counted. Our litigation team is going to walk you through some of the other reports we are hearing of folks in Georgia and Georgians around the country whose votes have not been counted. The Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, and his campaign operation at the Secretary of State's office has had us believe that there are 22,000 outstanding provisionals. And last night, I believe it was their pollster who said there were additional 3,000. They did not say there were more early votes to be found in Cobb County. They said it was just Chatham County. They have not provided you, members of the media, our campaign, or the public with the county counts of those alleged 22,000 provisionals. They have not provided those lists or those breakdowns. This is all public information, ladies and gentlemen. Public information. We demand that Secretary Kemp, his campaign, Candace Brose, I'm not sure who's paying her, whoever it is, Chris Harvey, I'm not sure. They need to release all the data, all the numbers, and they need to count every single vote. But you know what? They probably can't, because I don't know that they know where all those votes are. The final thing I will say is that overall, Brian Kemp is 25,622 votes above the threshold for a runoff election. 25,000 votes of nearly 4 million cast are at issue in this race. By his own admission, there are at least 25,000 outstanding votes and hundreds, if not thousands, of more that we are learning about and discovering every day. Georgians deserve to have their votes counted. The other number is 23,372. That is the number that would move this contest into a recount. It would put it under the 1% threshold. And if we found 23,372 additional votes for Stacey Abrams, we would be in that 1% threshold, permitted to not only request a recount, but it would have to be granted by the Secretary of State. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Allegra, who's going to walk you through the litigation we are pursuing, as will the entire team. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Lauren said, our litigation strategy has been focused on ensuring all of the votes are counted. What this campaign has done is gone out and asked Georgians across the state, throughout the state, to register to vote, to show up, to stay in line, to do what's required to ensure that their voices were heard. And they did it. They did it in historic and record numbers. And we believe that the Constitution and democracy require that each and every vote be recorded and counted. We'll start with John Chandler to talk about our overall litigation strategy, and then we'll hear from other members of the leaders of our litigation team.
Thank you, Allegra. John Chandler. Our point is the one that has been made twice now, but to put it very simply, all the votes haven't been counted. How can anybody claim a victory when there are enough votes that have not been counted that could cause a runoff here? We believe that everybody is entitled to have their vote counted, and we will not stop. Through litigation, through talking with the people in the various counties, we know of a number of absentee ballots that haven't been counted yet. We know of a number of provisional ballots. And in fact, provisional ballots, the counties usually say they will count on this coming Tuesday, since Monday is celebrated as Veterans Day. This coming Tuesday is when they're going to count the provisional ballots. With the efforts of the Secretary of State to prevent people from voting, particularly the large number of first-time voters, we know that there are many provisional ballots that will be counted, and that will very likely be a vast majority of them for Stacey. So that's our plan. We will litigate until we have determined that every person's vote has been counted. Allegra?
I want to spend a moment on absentee ballots. And I'd like to first start by speaking directly to every voter who voted via absentee ballot. First, to the many of you, the many, many, many of you from whom we have heard, thank you for taking the time to check, many of you multiple times, many of you as early as an hour ago, who were still reporting to us that when you go to the Secretary of State's website, your ballot is not reported as being accepted. We have no reason to believe those votes have been counted. If you voted absentee and you have not already done so, please, I implore you, go to www.mvp.sos.ga.gov. That is not the easiest website, so I'm going to repeat it. www.mvp.sos.ga.gov. Please go there and check to see if your absentee ballot is reflected as accepted. And if it is not, please let us know. Thank you to the hundreds of you who have already reached out to our voter protection hotline. You may email voterprotection@stacyabrams.com. Stacey Abrams has been fighting for people her whole life, and we are going to keep fighting for every voter. If you properly submitted your absentee ballot in a timely manner, we are going to keep pushing to get your vote counted. We have specific concerns in specific places, and we are moving forward in filing litigation today. I will turn the podium over to Kirk to tell you about litigation we're filing in Dougherty County.
Thank you. We plan to file litigation today on behalf of voters in Dougherty County who sought to vote via absentee ballot. Dougherty County received a large number of absentee ballot requests. Those ballots were supposed to be mailed in September. The county was initially delayed by an injunction when there was a problem with the ballot. By the time they began processing and sending out applications, they were hit with Hurricane Michael. We have reports of ballots never showing up or being misdelivered, and there was an incredible backlog. The county was continuing to send ballots at least as late as last week. Mail is relatively slow in Dougherty County. It's routed through Tallahassee and can take several days to deliver. Voters weren't afforded the statutory amount of time they have to review, fill out, and complete their ballots, and some of them may have gotten the ballots so close to the election that if they took them out of their mailbox, immediately signed them and returned them, they weren't showing up in time to be counted, and will be seeking relief with the court to make sure that those votes are counted.
Thank you, Kurt. And we are again looking at litigation in several other places, so please stay tuned. We will, of course, share that with you, the members of the public. We again thank everyone who's come forward, the many, many potential plaintiffs who have come to us, and we are working hard to ensure that all of those absentee votes are counted. I'm going to bring Beth Tannis up to talk about one situation that represents hundreds of situations. Again, a very typical complaint that we have been receiving on our voter protection hotline.
And I'm using this as an example just because it's a very clear-cut, uncomplicated example to show actually how clear-cut many of these examples are. We have heard from a graduate student who goes to Northwestern University in Illinois who did her undergraduate work at Spelman College, but of course she is in Illinois right now pursuing her studies. She mailed in her absentee ballot in plenty of time for it to be received and accepted, and yet when she goes to that website that Allegra just told you about, her ballot is not being shown as accepted. And we are hearing this same story from many college students who mailed in absentee ballots, and from hundreds of other voters who mailed in their absentee ballots well in advance of the deadline who are not showing as having those ballots accepted. And it's those situations that we need to hear about, but that we are also tracking down and talking to people about in order to make sure that what we are doing from the litigation standpoint is fact-based and that we are litigating on the basis of solid information that we have. Thank you.
Similarly, we are hearing many, many troubling stories regarding provisional ballots and the ways in which those were handled. We have heard from numerous voters, and again, I thank you for reaching out to us, who were turned away. For example, there were voters in Chatham County who were first told they needed to cast a provisional ballot, and then they have reported that they were told that the provisional ballots had run out. I don't know about you, but those are the sorts of stories I grew up hearing about from my ancestors when they would talk about the perils of voting. Right? Get in this line, then go get in that line, and then go get in that line, and we're so sorry there are no more ballots available. We have heard from specific Chatham County residents who were told they could not cast a provisional ballot because there were no more documents. As Beth said, we are not going to file until we have the facts around all of that, and so that is what we are doing now, getting those affidavits collected, and we will be seeking relief on behalf of those residents who attempted to cast a provisional ballot and were not able to do so. But we're also looking into relief for those residents who casted a provisional ballot that has not been counted for whatever reason. And so that is an important part of our work as well. And let me say this. We are obviously eager to hear from supporters. But this is much bigger than any one campaign. And this is a country built on democracy. We all get to vote. That's just part of the promise. And so we are working really hard to ensure that promise is fulfilled. We'll file our lawsuit in Dougherty County today. We're also issuing litigation holds throughout the state to election officials throughout the state to ensure that every piece of evidence is preserved, be it electronic or physical, be it a text message, be it a post, be it a casual note on a poll worker's pad. We want to ensure that every piece of evidence is available as we prepare to mount our very significant legal challenge. And with that, I believe we are ready to take questions. Yes?
Is the Abrams campaign ready to concede next week once the votes are certified if it does show that Kemp has 50% plus one vote?
Does your question presume that the votes have actually been counted by then?
It does show.
If what shows?
If the certified votes next week show.
So let me say this. What we believe, so as Lauren said yesterday you could look on the website and it would say 100% reporting, and then we see new numbers today. So we are in this race until we are convinced that every vote is counted. That is my answer. So we're prepared for this fight until every vote is counted.
Mr. Kemp today held a news conference with the governor and announced that he was resigning at high noon from his post as Secretary of State. He made a statement that there were roughly 20-some-odd thousand votes left to count, but even if his campaign were to receive 100% of them, it would not be enough to send us to a run. So what do you say to that? Are you saying that the information that they have is incorrect? Would you challenge it?
We have seen no list of provisional ballots. We have been told there was no early vote left, yet Cobb County reported as they were moving through to this press conference that there were additional votes. I neglected to mention another problematic piece of data. There are 4 counties, Bibb, Taliaferro, Floyd, and Coffee, who reported more advance early vote numbers going into Election Day than ended up being reported in the returns. We all know there is undervoting. I do not believe, until we have evidence, that 2,200 voters in those 4 counties were undervotes. That is, that those folks went in, voted early in person, and then skipped the governor's race. But that's right now what the data shows. The Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, owes voters an explanation, not just words or a press conference or a paper release from his campaign. We need to see lists, we need to see names, we need to see counts of every single vote. We need to see all the military provisional numbers, all of them. They all need to be counted. We do not believe any of these numbers are credible. They have been asked to provide the breakdown on those provisionals. Here's another question. Some counties, due to machine breakdowns because of dereliction of duty of the Secretary of State's office, when people were queuing up for 4 hours in the rain across the state on Tuesday, were given, quote unquote, emergency paper ballots. So when our lawyers and our team is talking to folks at the counties, we don't even know what the nomenclature is. Is that a provisional? Is that an emergency? Did the provisional emergency ballot version get counted in the absentee room on election day? Or is that part of the 22,000? These are answers that fall at the feet of Brian Kemp. He decided to not resign. He decided to oversee his own election. That was not our choice. He owns this, and he owes the people of Georgia an explanation.
You say that this falls at the feet of Brian Kemp, but as of a few minutes ago today, he has now resigned from Secretary of State. Do you think that that timing in resigning today was pointed so that these issues did not now come back on him, given that he did not previously resign, but did that as this litigation is mounting?
Brian Kemp's spokesperson put a bunch of you on the phone last night and said that he was the victor. His office issued that. And then this morning, he gets up at a press conference and thinks we're all just supposed to believe that we're moving on. And this, Brian Kemp owns this. I have not heard. Is his staff changing over? Where is that data going? Is Candace Brose now going to the campaign? Is Republican Governors Association running the Secretary of State's office? Is he returning his $129,000 annual taxpayer-funded salary while he's been driving around the state on his bus tour? I have lots of questions, and none of them have been answered. Brian Kemp and his campaign decided last night that they had the evidence to declare themselves victorious. I challenge Brian Kemp and his campaign and his staff to go find the voters who waited in four-hour lines in the rain with their children and explain to them why this is credible. Have him go around and do his bus tour on taxpayer dollars again and explain to voters why he is victorious. Go to those 236 Abrams voters in Cobb County who just this morning had their votes counted. This is about the integrity of the elections in the state of Georgia. Brian Kemp just can't walk away from that. Our governor just can't walk away from that. This is so much more than about Stacey Abrams. This is about the hundreds of thousands and millions of voters who believed in our system and showed up to cast a ballot. And press releases do not declare victory. Stephen?
On the Secretary of State's website, there are about 69,000 or so absentee voters who said they received a ballot but never returned them, in addition to 21,358 provisional ballots from across the county, according to data. Are you saying that the 69,000 that received a ballot but never returned it, some of those may be erroneously not counted? Or are you saying that the provisional plus the military plus these early votes coming in alone are enough to send it to a runoff?
So, two parts to that answer. One, we believe there are enough questions on outstanding absentee, military and overseas, provisional, and just overall returns, like the early votes that came in a few hours ago in Cobb, could absolutely be Abrams voters. As we have gone hour by hour, the numbers have gotten closer. So in total, we don't know. Maybe it's 25,000, maybe it's 50,000, maybe it's 60,000, maybe it's 100,000, maybe it's 5,000. We don't know. So that's part one. Part two, this absentee ballot litigation that we're looking into is about that exact issue. Stephen asked, if those folks are listed on MVP as having been mailed an absentee ballot, but it has not been returned or processed, what's that number? That's a great question for the Secretary of State. That's a great question for county elections officials who have been overwhelmed with absentee ballots and provisionals. We don't know how many are stacked up someplace. We don't know how many are at the post office. We don't know how many are sitting on somebody's dresser in their home. But I also want to be very clear. not only to voters, I want to be clear to the elections officials in these counties. We put this at the feet of Brian Kemp. This is on him. This is not to the hardworking men and women who have been there trying to process these absentee ballots in the counties. This is not on them. I want them to hear me clearly. The Stacey Abrams campaign puts us at the feet of the Secretary of State's office, who has not done its job to provide basic guidance. We all knew there was historic turnout and interest in this election, yet they did not call the big counties and say, do you have a plan to print additional paper? What's your plan? Here's a recommended number based on the total number of registered voters in your county. They did not tell counties what to do with the Veterans Day holiday and whether or not the expectation was they were to follow the Georgia Code and file their certifications by the end of the day Monday. He has fallen down on the job, and we put the blame on him. We are doing a litigation hold because we know there is such key evidence at the county level. Brian Kemp owns this. He has not issued the guidance that we would expect. In a regular race like this, our campaign would be in regular touch with the Secretary of State's office, and they would be providing information as they are tax-funded service to the state. They take an oath of office to do this work. The communication breakdown, the dereliction of duty, the abuse of power, and the outright corruption of this situation is catastrophic for the state and for the future of the state. And so I implore the members of the media to be asking these questions and getting this data. What I can tell you is we have people in every one of the counties. We build an unprecedented field operation. Our field staff and our volunteers are out there trying to collect information, talk to voters, talk to counties. And we're getting flooded with information. We are not going to file hyperbolic, erroneous lawsuits. We are going to take action that we think will move the needle and serve the people of Georgia. That is how we are going to operate here. Because apparently the onus is on us. And the Secretary of State can just walk away, appoint a new person, we're just supposed to be happy. You tell the 3.9 million Georgians who cast a ballot, you tell them that, is what I say to Brian Kemp.
Brian Kemp resigned as Secretary of State. Governor Deal held a news conference talking about the transition. Is there something that we're missing here? I mean, do you believe that what they're doing is not legitimate? That they would move forward doing this?
As I think,
legitimate way, I'm asking.
so, as it is very clear from our press conference, we are not stopping until we are confident that every vote has been counted. What the governor and the Secretary of State, the former Secretary of State, choose to do, we cannot control. We can't control that. What we can control is our actions. And we are going to fight, as Mr. Chandler said, until every vote is counted. That is our mission. That is what the Georgia voters are demanding, is a fair shake and a fair shot here.
I don't want to tip your hand too much on other litigation, but what areas are you most focused on going forward when it comes to the legal part of this?
Greg, I will tell you, we have been flooded with concerns, and so we are considering lots of different ones. Beth shared with you information about one graduate student, a Spelman College graduate. We also heard recently from a group of Howard students who are from Atlanta. They're Howard University college students who are from Atlanta, and they all coordinated with each other to make sure they all had their stamps, et cetera. They wanted to sort of vote as a social activity. And we received a long list of names, all of whom are witnesses for each other that they properly filled out the form and submitted them. None of their votes are showing up as accepted. That concerns us greatly. That concerns us greatly. You know, we have spent so much time on this campaign talking to voters ages 18 to 25, voters ages 18 to 30, who have said, why vote? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And we've said, of course it matters. It's the most important thing you can do as a citizen. We've told them time and time again And so we feel incredibly strongly that when these voters reach out to us, that we, lawyers, as people who take an oath to defend the Constitution, have an obligation to respond. So that's one area that we are particularly concerned about. There are specific counties where the numbers just look irregular, and so we are probing into those to really, as the data continues to come in. And again, as Lauren says, we're not the best source of the data, right? But we do have hundreds of lawyers who are deployed around the state that have been trained in voter protection, who have been out there collecting data, bringing information, and they are starting to, as things naturally do, fall into some buckets. Dougherty County made itself clear very early on, but we expect there to be similar, very clear lawsuits. Again, our goal is to get the votes counted, so part of what we're doing is constantly checking. We don't have to worry about these extra Cobb voters anymore, right? Those are some that we can take off the list. But the list is very, very long of people who have called us to say, I, for whatever reason, am a disenfranchised voter.
I'll take a question back. What's the total number of lawsuits that we're looking at possibly filing? And what's your latest estimate on the number of absentee ballots affected by the Dougherty County situation?
So the total number is whatever it takes. I'm sorry, I'll let Kurt talk about Dougherty.
As to Dougherty County, we're still receiving complaints and concerns from voters about what has happened to their absentee ballots. We know for sure that Dougherty County has received absentee ballots that were postmarked before the election after polls closed. They have received at least some ballots in. We also know that the backlog when Hurricane Michael hit on ballots was over 1,000 ballots. And so there might be some that have been received in, others that were lost in the mail. We're still assessing the total impact, but we know for sure that at least some voters of the county were affected.
Now, a lot of this would seem to be based on pretty much the black letter election law. Are you just saying, is there any kind of time constraints, regardless of how many press conferences are held, aren't you able to simply demand this as a law on your side?
Yes, we can demand it. Doesn't mean we can get it. And in answer to your question earlier, the former Secretary of State owns these problems. We have great hope that the woman who has been named to succeed him as of noon today will start putting out the information. It's certainly in her interest to do so. We all know it's gonna come out. It's gonna come out. It shouldn't be part of a book in January or February. It ought to be information that we can demand right now and get right now. And we will do what's necessary, perhaps to have a court order that it be released. But we're willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's going to try to clean up the mess that she was left with.
Are you under any particular time?
Well, the certification, next Monday is the official date. Most of the counties are closed on Monday for celebrating Veterans Day, so it's going to be Tuesday. And we're going to see what certifications show on Tuesday, but it's Tuesday night that we will be trying to figure out what's there, what's been counted, what's been omitted, and when to start the campaign for the runoff, or continuing. Excuse me.
I'll just add, a number of us on our team worked on Bush v. Gore, and so, the nature of these things, we remember then that we were, you're just up all night, that's how it works. There's a lot to be done very quickly, and that's why we're working so hard and so fast, and that's why we want to really urge voters, don't wait till next week to call us, right? We may not be able, to your point, there may be a time when we can't do anything for them. So we need to hear from any voters who believe that their vote has not been counted immediately. Voterprotection@StaceyAbrams.com.
With the specific litigation in Albany, what relief are you specifically planning to seek?
The relief that we'll be requesting today is to have ballots that were cast as no excuse absentee ballots treated under the same provisions that govern overseas and military ballots. We think that that relief is clearly warranted given the fact that voters should have received their ballots 45 days in advance, and some of them were receiving them only a few days in advance. You know, the relevant question in determining whether you get relief from a state law under the federal constitution is the burden that it would place on the state. And here the state clearly has processes in place to process absentee ballots from overseas voters and military voters. Those don't need to be in until Friday, and voters who voted in Albany should receive the same relief. And if I can make one other point about military and overseas voters, those votes are not due in until tomorrow. And that's one reason to be concerned when you see it, the Secretary of State issuing a number that they say is the definitive amount of votes left to be cast. We know for sure that number cannot be true. The Secretary of State could not possibly know the number of remaining votes outstanding because there are still votes that are eligible to come in.
Just super quick follow to that, why not other counties in southeast, that part of southwest Georgia? Are there other counties with similar issues?
Well, as Allegra mentioned, we're kind of taking the facts as they come. We're aware that Dougherty County experienced particularly difficult problems. Some other counties were able to get some of their absentee ballots out in September because they weren't subject to a court injunction or weren't hit as hard. We're going to continue to field complaints and to talk to voters and see if more relief is necessary. But we want to go to court with sure cases, with things where we see that the voters clearly need some relief, and that starts in Dougherty.
I know you said
Okay,
that,
I'm sorry, can we just make sure everyone gets questioning? Go ahead.
Will we be hearing from Stacey Abrams about all this? If so, and if not, why not?
Every single day, we are learning new information every single hour, and so we keep you all updated. Our candidate and our campaign are committed to making sure every vote is counted, and so all of us are focused on that. This is a constantly developing story. By the time we walk out of here, I know our data team is going to tell me that 9 new votes came in Mitchell County. He pulled me and told me that as I was walking here. Another hurricane-impacted county. I'm going to walk back in that room, and they're going to tell me that there's some new number, some new votes in Gwinnett County or whatever it is. This is a constantly developing story, and our campaign is just looking at the facts as they come in, as well as doing all of the fact-finding we possibly can. And so we can take one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you suing Dougherty County directly or the Board of Elections?
To obtain relief, we'd sue the superintendent of elections, which in the case of Dougherty County is all of the members of the Board of Elections in their official capacity.
All right, I want to thank you all for your time. We will send some follow-up information around. We will be sending you the complaint in Dougherty County. We will be sending you the copy of the litigation hold that will be going out, so that paper will be coming your way as soon as possible following this press conference. We will not stop until every vote is counted. Thank you so much for your time.
Did Oliver Floyd copy?